Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the Egyptian economic file, the subject which has been under the spotlight for quite some time now. This is a new year. Everyone is hoping the economy would bounce back. We actually heard the latest speech by President Sisi with all the aspirations and promises and what really to expect from the Egyptian economy in 2017. And joining us here in the studio to shed more light on the issue is engineer Abdel Nasser Taha, member of the International Federation of Real Estate in Egypt. We're also joined by Mr. Wael Nawwara, the political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
First of all, ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion, let's check out this report regarding President Sisi saying that the Egyptian pound could attain its value against the American dollar within 6 months. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
President Abdel al-Sisi has said that Egyptian pound can attain its fair value in about 6 months, trying to assure his anxious nation that a price surge since the abandonment of the currency control is temporary. In a sign of support for the central bank's November 3rd decision to free the exchange rate, Sisi said the currency was weaker than it should be, but should strengthen as reforms take hold. He said the current price is not the fair price, but the Egyptian can, through the measures we are taking and through population's cooperation, reach a fair value in 6 months when the exchange market stabilizes, adding that if that happens, it will be reflected in the price of goods and the pressure on the people will ease. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sharif Ismail said Egypt is on the track after the Egyptian pound's flotation, which contributed to correcting the economic path of the country. He stated that the government is working on providing basic commodities for citizens at suitable prices, emphasizing that monitoring groups are observing the market to deal with the greed of some traders. The Premier has said that al-Sisi called on the government to control the market and to face any greed or exploitation from traders and to provide essential commodities to the market as soon as possible. According to him, the drug shortage crisis would be resolved shortly, especially after the recent decision to increase the prices of 3,000 drugs by 15% on locally manufactured drugs and 20% on imported drugs. He said that people should see the return of many medicines that were previously experiencing a shortage. Ismail noted that the government is determined to continue with its plans towards the reform of national companies operating in the pharmaceutical industry and its production capacity so as to have a bigger share in the Egyptian market, which will positively reflect on the availability of drugs. The Prime Minister revealed that the negotiations with Iraq to import oil are ongoing and terms and conditions of supply operations from the Iraqi side are under struggle. In tandem with the free float, which has caused the pound to lose more than half its value against the dollar, the government also raised benchmark interest rates 300 basis points and sharply increased fuel prices. The November the government to finalize a $12 billion International Monetary Fund loan deal that it sees as key to shoring up investor confidence and attracting new funds into the country.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion right away. Now, Engineer Taha, President Sisi has promised that the economy will witness some sort of a rebound within 6 months. The Egyptian pound will retain its fair value against the American dollar within 6 months. Do you feel that this is a fair time estimate for the economy to rebound? Do you think it's a little bit too long, maybe too short of a time to actually take for the economy to bounce back? And what about the American dollar and the Egyptian pound? Do you feel that still there is some chance for the value of the Egyptian pound to rise against the American dollar?
I think first that all what happened during the devaluation of the Egyptian pound and all what happened in parallel, increasing the interest rate and so on, was mainly directing the economy to increase the reserve. And this put more pressure because devaluation of the currency increased the prices of most of product services and affected enormously the most of the population and brought a big stress on everybody. I think the plan to increase the reserve was a main priority, and still they are taking all actions in this direction. Many, as we said, many people was affected negatively. I think some few sectors was affected positively. We can see that the people working on exporting goods was better for them this time, and tourism also. They gained some more traffic, and they doubled maybe the revenue. But this is very few compared to the majority of sectors affected negatively due to this devaluation. Regarding how the devaluation and the value of dollar will slow down or get in a better shape compared to the Egyptian pound, we didn't get any information on how. We hear that it will happen, but we, as we say, the fundamentals of moving the Egyptian pound up is still not clear for many people. For me, at least, I cannot comment on it because I don't know what will happen to increase our export, for example, or our industry. Or still, there is no plan published yet.
Well, Mr. Nawwara, a lot of people, everyone in Egypt felt the hike in prices of almost all commodities. Now, is the value of the Egyptian pound against the dollar the main reason or the only reason for such a hike in prices, or is it also increase in taxes? Is it that a lot of the commodities, how do you say it? Is it about lifting subsidies? Is it the austerity measures being implemented to get more from the IMF loan? What are the main reasons behind such hike in prices?
Obviously, the main reason would be the high foreign content, of most Egyptian, most of the products and services sold in Egypt. And the reliance on imports, high percentage of reliance on the imports. So as soon as the dollar doubled in its value from around 9 to now over 19, so obviously the high content industries and the high content products would see a huge rise. To give you a numerical example, if one product had $5, for example, of its half of its value, $5 was imported. So that $5 at one point would cost 45 Egyptian pounds, but now it would cost 90 Egyptian pounds. Adding to it the rest, which would maybe another 50 pounds. So at one point it was sold at 100 pounds or 95 pounds. Now it's 150. So, but on the other hand, if there are products with a small imported content with a high local content, deepening the Egyptian component, then these products will not rise as much.
Yes. Well, Engineer Taha, now, it started off really, one of the early products and commodities that we actually felt an increase in the prices was the fuel and energy products. Now, do you feel President Sisi promised that within 6 months we're going to feel a rebound within the Egyptian economy? Do you feel that the government might actually lift more subsidies from the fuel and energy products in order to continue getting the following tranches of the IMF loan?
I think with all our problems with increasing the fuel prices and removing subsidies on fuel and power, most of the people, they know that this is the right way to reform the economy. But we don't only suffer from removing subsidies. Many things happened last 6 months. You have the VAT, you have the fuel prices, you have income taxes and more customs, you have also the dollar price. So you have maybe 5 factors, not only the fuel. And this is creating pressure. We know that this is negative, but we know that the reform part of it, an essential part of it, is reducing the subsidies. It creates a bigger problem on the overall economy. The other side, how to have a development plan in the industry. We have to also understand that all investors coming to Egypt, now they doubled the value of their investment due to the price of the dollar. So if I'm coming to make a project with 100 million Egyptian pound, now I can do it with the half of the dollar price. And this also created that Egypt is more attractive to investors. Till there is a gate or a problem not solved yet, how they will get back their money out. But I think that, as we say, the government should continue in the reform, but in parallel, they should measure the stress on the market and on the citizen. It's mainly the middle income and low income category. This is very hard for them, and some of them, they cannot afford to continue this way for a long time. But I think the only solution is to have also a plan in industry, in development, clear and neat and very fast.
Well, Mr. Nawwara, talking about the stress level on the Egyptian citizen, now Egyptians feel the stress of the hike in prices and the inflation rate. However, there has been no rise or an increase in their wages and their salaries. So how can the people cope with such an inflation, such a hike? Are we expecting some sort of an increase of the minimum wage, the basic salaries in the public and the private sectors for the Egyptians? Should we be expecting that soon? How do you see this playing out?
It would be totally pointless now if the salaries increase with the same ratio, because it will not do the economy any good. I think what Egyptians need to do at the moment is 2 things. One is to prioritize their spendings, try to minimize buying products with high foreign imported content, but on the other hand, try to seek alternative and additional sources of home revenue. For example, making some small home business, or working a second job. But to be honest, the trouble we have is because as a nation we have very low productivity and low competitiveness, and the government for the past 20 years has been subsidizing the US dollar, which meant that local production was less competitive than imported goods, and many factories, they shut down. Many businesses, industrial business, they turned into becoming real estate, just traders in real estate and starting real estate projects. And a huge part of the economy is stuck now in real estate projects which are not really productive, nor are they really investment, because the secondary market doesn't work very well for real estate. So as an economy, our economy and our productivity is very low. So, and that is reflected in the value of the US dollar now, which has gone up as compared to the Egyptian pound. But still, many Egyptians are still buying a lot of imported goods. And I think now it is becoming more and more expensive. I hope that other Egyptian investors will take this opportunity and provide alternative products, Egyptian products with high local content at a relatively low prices. This is an opportunity now to invest into substitutes, in Egyptian substitutes with reasonable quality.
But talking about how the citizen would deal with it, we've always been saying for the past while that we should tighten the belt and endure the burden and all of these expressions. Does this mean that now's the time to actually act upon these expressions and really tighten the belt and really think about everything that we spend our money on?
Yes, I think we need to prioritize. Every family needs to prioritize. People will have to reduce the reliance on imported goods or on goods with high imported content. There are many spendings on things like mobile, you know, there are so many spendings on, for example, packaged food, which could be substituted with wholesome food. There's so many spendings that could be reduced, and in fact, it is even more healthier for you to reduce many of these non-necessary spendings. But of course, there are some people who are just getting by with the very basic, you know, with the basic needs. For this, the government must install some social safety net, you know, increase maybe the rations of subsidized goods, like you know, the bread card, which, you know, the bread smart card, which was in effect, maybe increase the ration or the value of the goods that provided, especially the foods provided through this means. And also some of the families were having difficulties obtaining that cards. Make it, you know, easier for people who are really in need to obtain that card and get subsidies, because there is a huge part of the Egyptian citizens who will not be able to cope without these subsidies.
Yes. Well, Engineer Taha, you've mentioned earlier that there are some sectors that actually are benefiting from what's going on right now in the economy, and they're mainly the exporters. However, the ratio between importing and exporting here in the Egyptian economy is huge, so it's still a very small effect or significance regarding the big picture of the Egyptian economy. Now,
well, it was small because the Egyptian government was subsidizing the US dollar.
Yes.
Was subsidizing imports. So that's why the exports were very small and people relied on imports.
Yes, and we are actually importing more around 80% of our commodities, as opposed to 20% exporting. So it is a huge difference. So do you feel that, Mr. Nawwara and yourself, you've mentioned that this is a good opportunity to actually really focus on the industries, increase the local production within the Egyptian economy. Now, there is a lot of problems with the investors and the industries. There is an increase in raw materials. The pharmaceutical industry is suffering in producing, actually, medicine, and many industries as well. So how can we actually find the balance to increase the local production, even though there is still a hike in prices with all the raw materials that are necessary to increase production?
I want to highlight the fact, I know that many importers for small business from here and there to the market, when they face the problem importing and finding dollars and paying customs, and it was very difficult for them, they moved all their investment to small industries. And this is positive, because they forget about the business of importing and they directed all their money to do investment. What if there is an advice to the government, and I'm from the real estate sector, is to direct people not to the real estate sector, is to direct people to the industry and to subsidize industry, to subsidize power for industry, lands for industry. This is the only way to reform our development and to change completely the market poles and the market factors. We have to direct the government and the activities and the economy to the industry by all means. It is not to ask people to wait more and more and more and continue to suffer, and the future will be rosy because the dollar price will go down. This is not enough. What is enough for them is to open and subsidize all what can help people to produce more. In this case, and this is the rule and expected actions to be taken by the government, and easy for them to do it. If this is advice, I totally advise to direct all our economy to production.
Well, what about the mega projects such as the electricity plants being invested in and actually being built, and the power and the energy sector as a whole, also talking about the new administrative capital, talking about the expansion of the Suez Canal. Now, all these projects, shouldn't they help the Egyptian economy at least decrease or take down the prices and the expenses of the industry as a whole?
It's nice that you mentioned about the power problem and where we are now, and what happened during the last 2 years with the Minister of Electricity and Power was phenomenal, because we was in a huge crisis, and he managed this crisis, and we remember this day how it was very tough. Now the Ministry of Power, they have plans to cover all our needs till 2020. And there is no problems at all. And it is very fluent, and nobody feel any kind of problems. And what happened really was at the technical part and the financial part was fantastic. And removing subsidies gradually didn't affect too much families and people in Egypt. So what happened in this exercise specifically was very, very positive. Building new cities and building, maybe this is my sector, I know that we have a major problem, and maybe in several conferences we talk about this. We have to understand that we have a serious problem in the urbanization. The sector now, the population of Egypt now is growing. In 30 years we'll have another 80 million. The land for building houses and to accommodate this means that we need 40 cities, each is 2 million. So we need to accommodate another 80 million on 40 cities. This has to start today. If the government does not open enough land, planned land, we will have slums, and there is no other option. So immediately now we have to start big urbanization plan, and whatever the government is providing in the Ministry of Housing, by all means still is not covering. So we have to build tens of cities, not only one city, not only the new capital, not only. We have to open a lot of cities everywhere. But cities has to be built according to resources. So wherever there is resources for people to work, not for people to take houses. We have to select the areas where we have a lot of resources for development and build cities based on these resources. So we transfer the urban development from housing to also industry and economy and production. And I think in the Ministry of Housing and many authorities, they now understand that building cities should be based on economy. And the need is huge. Everybody has to know that we are receiving another 18 million in 30 years. We have now to start. And slums is killing the agriculture, killing the urban, the formal urban, and creating crimes, creating social, culture, economical problem, security problems everywhere. So I think this is the only way to reform also the housing and the urban structure of Egypt for the future. It's a must.
Well, Mr. Nawwara, this is quite an important point that Engineer Taha made. Do you feel that the government is doing enough to, or the Ministry of Housing is actually doing enough to really plan that far ahead, trying to accommodate another 80 million for the next 30 years? And building cities is not just about building houses or buildings, it's about the infrastructure, it's about the water, the medical care, the education, everything that comes with it. Do you feel that we're still far off from actually achieving such a long-term goal?
First, I'd like to salute my colleague for, although he's coming from the real estate sector, he stresses the need to divest our attention and our investment from real estate to industry, to agriculture, to IT, to productive services, because the reality is many of our real estate projects are only either summer projects or winter projects, you know, Ain al-Sokhna or North Coast, or even second home in the suburbs who people. So it is not really touching the people who need housing. It is, and a lot of people consider it as investment, but it's not investment, because the people who have them have no intention of renting them or have no intention of selling them. Some of them are, you know, just keeping them for children or something like that. So that's important to actually direct our attention and policies towards encouraging investment in industry and discouraging investment in real estate by a host of means, by positive incentives, tax breaks, and the opposite for real estate, as well as injecting government demand. The government in any country is the biggest buyer. Unfortunately, the government of Egypt does not have any programs to encourage local industry through its own procurement. In fact, on the contrary, it's always seeking agents who are importing things. Truly that, yes, some of these products are of better quality, but who is going to encourage our production if our own government is insisting on having European or Asian or American production? The other thing is to think that we should accommodate another 80 million for the next 30 years. I think it's a wrong approach. I think we need to immediately start installing policies which will discourage having 80 million in the next 30 years, because Egypt, quite honestly, cannot provide for another 80 million. Egypt is a big country, but it has limited water resources. It has limited ability to grow crops, limited ability to provide food, and the problem is, at the moment, the increase in population comes in the poorer sectors. The people who are well educated, who have jobs, who can add to the economy, these are the people who are not adding to the population. So we need to look at the small strata of families which are having unplanned growth, and start giving incentives to this family to start planning their size, planning their growth, going to the doctor. Many of these families, in fact, they just, it just happens. It's not that they are really intending to have that large number of family members. So I think we should not just say, oh, okay, we're having 80 million people coming in the next 30 years. Let's plan for them. I think we should plan not to have 80 million people. And that can happen through awareness, can happen through financial incentives to these poorer families who go unplanned. Of course, we should also focus on creating opportunity before even creating houses. We should focus on creating opportunities. Once we create opportunities, the development will happen by itself, and all the government has to do at that time is, as my colleague was saying, is to make plans to make sure that we don't end up having slums to cover, to give housing for the people who go to work in these opportunities. So we should not focus now on real estate again, or in any new cities or anything like that. We have been doing too much of that already. We should focus on creating economic opportunity, investment in agriculture, investment in industry, investment in IT, investment in productive services, and hand in hand with that, plan for the private sector. If needed, they will be investing in providing houses for the people who will have to move towards these opportunities.
Well, Engineer Taha, yes, well, if the idea of actually accommodating another 18 million for the next 30 years is too big of a task to actually really try and digest. Now, if our government is really relying on a lot of financial support, the IMF loan, getting financial aid from countries in Europe, from Gulf countries, if we are looking for this sort of finance, how can we find the balance of actually getting enough money to work on our industries and our sectors here in Egypt, and at the same time encourage the production and the productivity in different sectors, whether if it's IT or energy or agriculture or industry? How do you see the government actually striking such a balance?
In fact, I want first to comment on what Mr. Wael said, but in terms of our resources of water, we know that there is general information that we have a crisis in water, and we cannot continue this way with another 80 million. Yet this is right. But if we look to the world map of water per capita, we'll find that we are not in a bad situation. We have really a definition of bad management of water. This is a fact. We don't have a shortage. We have more a bad management of water, especially in the agriculture. This is first. The second is that to reform the housing and the real estate market, there is a lot of points we in the International Federation take lessons from others, because this happened everywhere, slums, housing, social housing, and so on. We have a big stock of residential unit closed, and this has to be used. So again, this is a big series of regulation and policies, and we are working, the International Federation, with all the concerned, even in the parliament and other entities, to give to the government and to the, now there is big initiation to reform and create new laws for the real estate market. And we are giving them, and we do a lot of conference and so, to give them a receipt how we can change according to the international standard. Because if we want to open our real estate market to the international, this is a big product. The real estate for many countries was a main product, like many cities all around, in Singapore, in Dubai, and others. Now to open our market for investor to come and buy and invest and put money here, and this is a part of products, the Egyptian product, and bringing dollars to the economy, we have to reform our market. Because Egypt, many people in the Gulf and other, they have secondary house here, and they like to extend. This is a nice place for Europeans, for Arabs and others to have a secondary home, and they cannot buy. Now we are in a good shape in terms of prices, because due to the dollar price. Now, people will not come to buy until we reform our market. And there is a lot to do in this. We have to go according to the international definitions and regulation to be attractive to other investors. And this is a big sector. For the industry, there is a lot of light and soft industry, which we can introduce, like in India. For example, in one company in India, like Infosys, their export of IT, one company, is the revenue, the annual revenue is around 10 point something billion dollars per year. 98% of this revenue is coming out of India, and this is an IT company. 62% of this revenue is coming from the States. And this is a cheap manpower, and it consumes a lot of the careers, skills, training, and so. And this is the double of the revenue of Suez Canal in one company. So, and we have a lot of resources, human, climate, others, we can use. And it should be part of our development plan, including developing cities.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of these hopes and a lot of this potential within many industries is really needing a lot of finances, and one of the main resources of actually money coming to the country right now is the IMF loan. Now, some of the details of getting the tranches from the IMF loan has been released. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Minister of Finance Amr El-Garhi announced the terms of the loan agreement with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, under which Egypt is set to obtain a $12 billion loan over 3 years. In a press conference, El-Garhi said the most prominent terms of the economic reform program are reducing the overall deficit, reaching a deficit of 10.1% in the current fiscal year, and to decrease it to 8.5% in the coming fiscal year, and turning the initial deficit into a surplus this fiscal year. The agreement includes reducing domestic public debt to 98% or 99% of the GDP instead of 100% now. Additionally, he said the program also includes lifting fuel subsidies entirely in a period of 3 to 5 years. Minister El-Garhi pointed out that a new small enterprises law will be passed while maintaining the value-added tax rate at 14% starting from the coming fiscal year. He noted that the taxes are set to contribute states by 0.5% and improve the return through the public companies IPO program. The minister noted that, furthermore, he stressed that the agreement with the IMF includes improving the investment climate through passing the licenses and bankruptcy laws. He added that the financial results of the government bodies will be reviewed on a regular basis and design a plan to boost Egyptian exports. According to El-Garhi, the US dollar price at customs will be fixed for importers throughout the months, starting from from February instead of changing the rate every day. He explained that the rate will change on a monthly basis according to average rates of the month before. The rate has been changing every day after the flotation of the Egyptian pound, which was part of the agreed-upon IMF loan terms. The minister said the bylaws of the value-added tax will be issued within 2 weeks. He pointed out that the government targets reducing the public deficit in the year's budget to 10.1% to 2.2%. El-Garhi said the deficit fell to 5.1% in the first half of the current fiscal year, down from 6.2% in the corresponding period last year. He pointed out that the revenues of the public budget have increased in the first half of the current fiscal year by 14.5% compared to the same period in the fiscal year the year before. El-Garhi said the steps are part of the ongoing economic reforms the country urgently needs, noting that Egypt is set to issue international bonds worth $2 to $2.5 billion in a promotional tour, which kicked off on Monday in the United Arab Emirates before moving to the United States and Britain to conclude on the 24th of January. He noted that the IMF loan comes with an interest of 1.5 to 1.75%, adding that each tranche is payable within 10 years.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion now. Mr. Nawwara, President Sisi actually mentioned in his last speech that what has been achieved economically here in Egypt over the past 3 years is much more than what has been achieved over the past 3 decades. Now, this might seem a little unusual to hear, especially under the current inflation rate and the hike in prices. But how true is that? And do you feel that it was a matter of time that we actually needed to carry out these measures and really tighten the belt because we've been avoiding to do so for the past 30 years?
I think that there has been a number of healthy reform measures. For example, the energy prices reform and also the Egyptian pound reform. However, the mistakes of the past 60 years, I wouldn't even say the 30 years, the mistakes of the past 60 years in terms of economic policies, I think have been accumulated, and it's just it's not going to be solved overnight. We needed somebody with that kind of social and political capital to sacrifice some of his capital, which I think this is the main thing which can be counted for President Sisi, that he sacrificed a lot of his political capital in doing the right thing. In lowering the Egyptian pound, in introducing reforms in the energy subsidies and so on. However, I just would have hoped that the Egyptian pound, for example, would have been done in 2013. At that time, we were receiving, 40 or 50 billion dollars from Saudi Arabia, from Kuwait, and other countries. And some of them were just grants, they were not even loans, such as the loan of the IMF. So, but anyway, better late than never. I think it's a good step. I think that the economy needs a lot of other policies, incentives policies, reforms in real estate. We need to craft many smart policies in order to encourage industry, encourage the IT sector, encourage some of the services such as medical services, encourage turning real estate from dead capital, black capital, as Hernando de Soto would call it, into productive capital, turning real estate into a product which people can come and invest to, turning somewhere like the North Coast into a productive area where people come and rent houses and places and create, a real economy instead of just the 2-week summer use that which led to very low utilization rate. Some of these investments had only maybe 2 or 3% utilization rate. And of course, anything when you invest in a factory which works only 3 days in 100 days, of course you'll be faced with economic problems. So we need policies now to augment these structural reforms. We need policies to reduce the red tape and reduce the bureaucracy and make it easier for companies to register and start and work and invest and repatriate their profit and so on.
Yes. Well, Engineer Taha, if what has been achieved for the past 3 years is more than what has been achieved over the past 30 or even 60, as Mr. Nawwara is saying, do you feel that we will not really see how practically this improvement, because most of the projects are mainly long-term projects that it will only bear the fruit much later on? And do you feel that the international community actually sees the Egyptian economy really reforming its strategy, improving economically over the past 3 years? So there will be sooner rather than later a lot of international and foreign investment really taking practical steps in Egypt.
I think the latest report I went through last 2 weeks, the latest in January, are showing very positive indicators about Egypt. Not only due to the reform, but due to many things. And still we need more. Egypt is very close to be one of the best 10 best investment destination. But still this needs a lot of work. And I think we have a lot of assets we are not using properly. We have to take serious action and very strong action, reforming also the administrative system. Beside reforming the regulation and laws to be more efficient. We have big asset in human resources, and this is totally unused. The time we say that there is no work, there is no money, and there is no salaries, and want to increase our salaries in many sectors, we don't find technical people with any price. So this big contradiction in the market has to be studied, not separated. It has to be studied overall. The government carried a responsibility, big responsibility, to push a lot of work. This never happened before. To push money and work in the infrastructure for find jobs. And still we have shortage in contractors. Still, if you go to any contractor, tell him what you are looking for is not looking for materials, for equipments, he's looking for people, he does not find. And still our plans to develop more and more cities and work, and even in the industry, the people and the business people, and they are suffering, they don't find the human trained labor or skilled labor to work. So the culture of work also needs to be reformed, not at the governmental side, but at the Egyptian population side. I think we are missing the use from all these pieces of paper and from this puzzle. We have to create something in the development. Now we know that we faced a big and serious time in the security. Now, finally, alhamdulillah, we are in a much better shape. Now our war is a serious war in the development and the economy. And it is serious war. It is not. And this needs everybody. It needs the business people, the industry people. It needs everybody, the involvement of everybody. And we have to be responsible. The media also carry a big part that this is time for development. Do it now or never.
Yes. Well, Mr. Nawwara, as Engineer Taha has mentioned, the culture of work and the work ethic and the professionalism is definitely something that all Egyptian citizens should be concerned with. But apart from that, both of you have mentioned the necessity of having a reforming process regarding laws and regulations. Now, if we look at the government and the parliament being responsible for regulating and reforming and changing and strengthening these policies and laws, do you feel that, how would you evaluate the performance of the Egyptian parliament so far in taking upon such a task? Also the government, there has been, over the past few years, there has been quite a few reshuffles, especially within the economic and financial team within the cabinet. How do you evaluate the performances of both the government and its financial team, and the Egyptian parliament as well?
I think we still need to see some work done in these areas. It's enough to go to one of the notary offices, for example, Shahr al-Aqari, for example, to know that we still a long way behind, many countries. Just yesterday I was watching a report from the UAE about the time it takes to start a company, and it was measured in minutes. Of course, we still in Egypt here have a long way to go in reducing bureaucracy, in making procedure much more speedy and transparent, and also online oriented, rather than having to go and spend a few months to try to get some paper done. So this is one of the biggest problems we have in Egypt, is the administrative side of things. In addition, of course, to the policies and regulations, we have also legislations which are contradicting. We have a jungle of legislation, which many of them are contradicting, and even in real estate we still have the old rental laws, which basically gives the right to the renter rather than and deprives the owner of the landlord of any rights. So there are so many laws and regulations that need to happen. So I think the government would have to prioritize, because some things obviously are needed in the short term in order to start feeling the fruits of these reforms. These reforms alone will not work. We need to work on these administrative obstacles, on the legislations which need to be changed, on the kind of the mortgage law. All of these things, they need to be done sooner rather than later.
Well, what about the administrative regulations? Do you feel that this is something that can be fixed quickly, or is this something that is really embedded within our culture that it would take quite a long time to change?
I actually think that although it is, as you say, it's part of it is embedded in our culture, but I actually, we saw in Egypt during, for example, Ahmed Nazif, when he was Minister of ICT and when he became Prime Minister, many procedures were introduced online, and it was just like, overnight you started being able to do this and that online. But I think we regressed now. We kind of went back, or at least did not progress in the same rate. So I think there are ways to introduce reforms, and even introduce them in certain sectors. You don't have to introduce reforms in all sectors, but start with the sectors which are really critical. As well as education. My colleague was mentioning the lack of the skill gap. We have many people going into university and schools and so on, but the end product is very often that they don't have the skills required by the labor market. And also mentally, a lot of families, they just want their kids to go to this college or that university, while in fact the required skills in the market are different.
Yes. Well, Engineer Taha, because we're running out of time now, the President has promised that there will be a significant improvement within the Egyptian economy, and we do have to really fight against all odds to really improve the economy, even though at some time it does, the Egyptian people really feel the burden of, the heavy burden of such a task. Now, what is the silver lining that you would say, the thing that we really should be looking at to keep us going, to be more optimistic and really make it happen, make this happen in a reality, really, in 6 months or maybe even less?
Maybe I can talk about our sector, the real estate, more, and the responsibility of the people in our industry. And this sector is very sensitive and also very big. And all the NGOs and people working in the sector, now we are talking differently. And we also try to help the government to put the right regulations and to take the right actions. We want to open the market, rental law to be changed, and we propose many solutions to open our market to the international. This is a major issue in the real estate market, to make a free market, not only local but also international. This is a major issue. Another issue that also part of our development is mainly, number one, is industry. And building communities based on industry. And I always insist this is a key word if you want to grow. One of the positive things I want to mention that I work as advisor for Suez Canal, and you can believe it or not, building permits there, you can take it in 5 days. And this is a big part of our development. And this is very exceptional, but this is the efficiency of a place where we direct all the investors, and this is the result, because the intention of the management at this scale of Dr. Ahmed Darwish was to do it at this level. We can do.
Yes. Definitely, ladies and gentlemen, the task is very big, but if there is a will, there is a way. And Egyptians have been known for their strong will, and definitely we will be bouncing back. The Egyptian economy will be bouncing back, hopefully, within this year. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Mr. Wael Nawwara, the political analyst. I'd also like to thank very much Engineer Abdel Taha, member of the International Federation of Real Estate here in Egypt. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.